Hazır mı? Okay. Okay, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues, welcome to our event in Turkish Pavilion. I would like to thank our climate team in advance for this well-organized event. My name is Şevket Altuğtaş Demir. I am the group director at İlbank. İlbank is an investment and development bank in Turkey. We are responsible for financing the municipalities. Of course, this beyond these financing events, we have already guiding our municipalities and giving technical support all these municipalities. Today we will discuss the Turkish reconstruction and recovery efforts after the devastating earthquake in 2023. We have three very valuable colleagues from our international partners. Mr. Ito from JICA, Ms. Rachel from EBRD, and Ms. Dauda from Islamic Development Bank. Now in 2023, February, the devastating earthquake hit our country and it will affect its very large area. 11 city centers and totally 15,000 people directly affected from this earthquake. And approximately 2 million houses were damaged during this earthquake. After the emergency stage, we start the reconstruction and the recovery efforts by the coordination of the central government. And this, of course, there are, I said, some negative impacts of the earthquake, but despite these negative effects and impacts, it's an opportunity. While we are making the reconstruction, we can make our cities more livable, more sustainable, and of course, more resilient to the disasters and climate effects in the future. And in Turkey, there are two layers of the reconstruction efforts. One layer is housing, and this housing effort all are coordinated by the Minister of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change. Under their high, strong commitment, they have already distributed 300,000 houses to the people in the region. And we hope that at the end of 2026, 150 will be delivered to the people, and we finalize the reconstruction of the houses which are held by the central government in next year. And the second layer is the infrastructure. As you know that there are some sub-layers under infrastructure, energy infrastructure, transportation infrastructure between the cities, intercities, roads, and communication, and finally water and sanitation infrastructure. In Turkey, normally, the municipalities are responsible for investing and operating water and sanitation network. However, after the earthquake, it is not possible for these municipalities to organize, to invest and operate these infrastructure. By the way, İlbank was assigned as the coordinating unit and institution for the reconstruction investments in the region. So during this period, we were in contact with our partners, and we are now working with 6 different international financial institutions with the total amount of 1.8 billion euro for only water and sanitation, and 3 of them are with us today. Of course, financing is very important, and thank to them for receiving this finance from these institutions. But the most important thing is not receiving the finance. The most important thing is bringing the knowledge and the experience that they have and we are bridging this experience and knowledge to our municipalities and to our investment. So I want to thank again to all these colleagues. Today we have 3 colleagues, as I expressed. Now I have their short bios and CVs, but if I have to read their bios, I think we need 1 more hour. They are very well experienced colleagues from their institutions, and I want to directly start to proceed with my questions. And we will start with Ito from JICA. He is the Director General of Global Environment Department of JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency. Welcome again. And I have a question. And we know that JICA has a very quality infrastructure investment framework. And under this framework, what lessons can be drawn from JICA's experience in balancing urgent construction needs with long-term climate and social objective? And the floor is yours.
No, that would be okay. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank for your kindly inviting me to this very important event. And before responding to the questions, please let me go through what is JICA and what kind of activities we are doing for climate resilient cities. Okay, then. First, an overview of JICA. JICA is one of the world's largest bilateral development agencies and the implementing body of Japan's official development assistance. Since its establishment in 1961, JICA has supported many developing countries. Then JICA's support is based on the 3 pillars. The first one is the finance and the investment. Second, granted, and the third, technical cooperation.
To the
Finance and investment includes ODA loans, which is a sovereign loan, and the second one is private sector investment finance is similar to IFC does. And in the volume-wise, this finance and investment is about 80%, or more than 80%. But the number of projects, we have many small technical cooperation projects and so on. And also, JICA is very unique in a sense. We have a disaster relief team for response to disaster. And also we have volunteers like peace coders. So I think JICA is very unique bilateral relationship. And then this slide shows that the scale of JICA's climate-related projects. In 2023, we implemented over 2 trillion yen worth of project. But in fact, the adaptation is a bit much smaller than the mitigation. The adaptation is very difficult in nature, but we are trying to mainstream the concept in our operations. Then next, thank you. Okay, then JICA has sector-specific strategies called JICA's global agendas, totaling 20 sectors. And this one shows the climate. This agenda shows the climate action through 2 approaches. First, promoting the implementing of Paris Agreement, and second one is promoting co-benefit climate projects. Next, please. Then there is another sectors which is related with disaster risk reductions. And our goal is to reduce deaths, affected populations, and economic losses from natural hazards by natural hazards. We pursue this through three approaches. One, promoting pre-disaster investment. Second, strengthening the disaster risk understanding and governance. And the last one is promoting Build Back Better. This Build Back Better concept was described in the Sendai framework for DRR. So this is a very important word. And next, please. Then, under approach one of the climate change, we support the implementation of Paris Agreement. This slide shows activities in Samoa, Mongolia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. We mainly focus on capacity building for government officials in developing countries to help implement the Paris Agreement. Next, please. This one shows promoting co-benefit climate measures. This measure aims to address both development challenges and climate change issues simultaneously across sectors such as urban development, energy, and agriculture. Next, please. Then let's look at the co-benefit measures for adaptation. These include disaster risk reduction, including Build Back Better, water resource management, and agriculture. Next, please. Here is an example of co-benefit adaptation project for capacity development for sewage management of Phnom Penh City. With support from sewage experts from Kitakyushu City, Japan, we assisted in legal and technical guideline development for Phnom Penh's sewage system, taking climate change impacts into action. Next, please. This slide shows examples of JICA's cooperation in the disaster risk reduction. We support resilient infrastructure and disaster risk reduction projects in many countries. In Turkey, we assist in promoting disaster resilient public building. Okay, next, please. Then other adaptation measures include the development of meteorological radar system and weather index-based crop insurance system. In Kiribati, we implemented the Build Back Better project to develop disaster resilient national roads. Next, please. Then lastly, here is an example with the Green Climate Fund. JICA is an accredited entity of the GCF. In collaboration with GCF, we are working on coastal disaster prevention in Maldives. Next, please. Okay, then let me try to respond to your questions. JICA promotes quality infrastructure investment in line with the policies of the government of Japan. Quality infrastructure refers to infrastructure with resilience against natural disasters, inclusiveness that ensures no one is left behind, sustainability that considers social and environmental impacts, among others. We recognize that in the event of a disaster, there are cases where urgent restoration of facilities is necessary. However, the impacts of climate change are expected to persist over the long run. It is said that $1 of investment in disaster preparedness can save $15 in recovery cost. So JICA is therefore placing emphasis on pre-disaster investment, leveraging Japan's experience and the technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ito, for this presentation, and thank you for highlighting the pre-disaster investments. Yes, we care it and we are aware of it. However, we must be more ready for the preparedness for those future climate and disaster risks. Thank you. And I will proceed with Rachel. We know that EBRD has a green cities framework, and under this green cities framework, they are integrating all the approaches to urban planning and investments. So the question is, how can the principles of EBRD green cities be applied to resilient cities efforts in Turkey, especially in the earthquake-affected cities? The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. So for those who don't know, EBRD is the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And it's a funny name because Turkey is actually our biggest country of investments we operate in. It's not Europe, strictly speaking, Europe neighborhood. But we are a regional multilateral development bank that operates not just in Eastern Europe, but also Central Asia, Turkey, Caucasus, North Africa, and now 6 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa and Iraq. So we are regional, but a very broadly defined region. And Turkey is also our largest source of green investments from 2024. So the biggest country for green investments from EBRD. So it's a big, important partnership to us. So when the earthquake happened, obviously we were ready and waiting to do what we could to restore order and, as you say, build back better. So our Green Cities program is a good starting point for that conversation because it's quite strong in Turkey as well. I think we have Ankara, Bursa, Istanbul, Izmir, and of course Gaziantep are all green cities. So Gaziantep was of course horribly affected by the earthquake. But we had engaged there previously and had a green city action plan ready to go. And the structure of these plans I think is interesting for thinking about how we respond to disasters as well. Because many of the principles are exactly the same. First, it's investment focused, it's action focused. So each city needs to have an investment transaction planned with us for us to be willing to engage in this, complicated, expensive, long time process of understanding what the city's long-term sustainability needs are. So there's an investment trigger project ready as part of the Green Cities program. Then there's the action plan. So Ilbank looked at the post-earthquake landscape and identified the priority infrastructure investments. I think it was something like 2 billion euros investments required as quickly as possible. Green City action plans aren't undertaken in the quite same urgency, but similarly, it's scoping what the priorities are. And it does that in a very participatory way, bringing together all the different departments of the city, civil society, communities, universities, to understand not just what people want now, but what will be needed in the future. Bringing that insight to understand that some of these cities have been in these areas for hundreds of years, 1,000 years maybe in some of the countries we operate in. We want them to be there as strong, as robust in another 1,000 years. So we're not looking at those timelines for climate just yet. We're looking more in the 50 to 100 year range. But this is something that's at the heart of the Green Cities program, is looking to the future. It also has a very strong focus on infrastructure, because without the infrastructure, nothing else can happen. I think we've all had some experience in our lives, whether it was something as mundane as bad traffic congestion or something as serious as long-term power outages, water supply disruptions. It's not just that business can't function, people can't live if they're not getting clean water and, in some cases, energy to power the hospitals, or even just air conditioning, which is life-saving in many instances, in many contexts. So that infrastructure focus as an enabler to growth and prosperity is core of the Green Cities program. And finally, the capacity building. Everything we do, we try to, again, look to the future, not just in designing the infrastructure, but in supporting the people and communities that will be operating it and using it so that they're ready for the future as well. So I think there's a lot of parallels to the Building Back Better process. And I won't say it's an opportunity, because I don't think there's any silver lining to a disaster. But I will say we know that designing infrastructure to be more resilient in the future is less expensive than retrofitting existing infrastructure. So when we are rebuilding, we can rebuild to higher standards than maybe the original facility was designed for. We can look to that future, and we can adopt the newest technologies available. So for example, in Hatay, where we're working on a wastewater treatment facility, we can engage and build to EU environmental water treatment standards. We're also building a crisis management training program for employees there, so that if another crisis happens, whether it's an earthquake or a drought or a flood, or it's increasingly catastrophic, it could be many at once, the workers are prepared and have an action plan for how to keep services running, ideally, but respond very quickly to restore services when that emergency happens. So I also want to say that we're at EBRD thinking always about how to go to the next step. So we're designing a new program called the Resilient Network Action Plan, the RENAP. We're piloting in Morocco, not earthquake focused, it's focused on coastal zone hazards, but looking at the system in a disaster. So it's not just about the resilience of a component of infrastructure, a piece of pipeline, a particular road segment, but about how do these operate in tandem together. So when we're looking at earthquake recovery, we can think similarly. If the electricity network is knocked out, can the pumping stations work? Can we get water? The water infrastructure itself might be perfectly fine, but if there's no power, there's no water. So we need to think about the second order impacts as well and prioritize actions that capture the full effect of disruptions in one area. So this thinking about an inclusive systemic approach and looking towards longer term sustainability is at the heart of both green cities, EBRD operations, and ideally building back better.
Thank you, Rachel. We see that receiving the IFI's knowledge is very important, by the way. We can somehow close the gap, financing gap. However, we cannot able to close the technical gap. So planning activities with international lessons learned, it makes more sense for us. And for these green cities framework approach works in Turkey very well, and we see the results in the earthquake region. So thank you. And I will proceed to India Dauda from ISDB. He is the manager of Climate Change Division at Islamic Development Bank, and welcome again. We are working with IDB for a long time, and they have a unique model. They are offering Islamic finance to our projects in the post-disaster for financing the post-disaster efforts. So the question is, how can these instruments, the Islamic financing instruments, be leveraged to promote climate-resilient urban infrastructure in the developing countries? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. So the Islamic Development Bank, like you said, so we are covering 57 countries across the globe, and all of our financing is Islamic financing with different instruments. We even have loan, but our loan is interest-free. So you can imagine it's a small portion of our financing. So the different other instruments that we have, including installment sale or leasing, and all of those Islamic finance instruments, they are all asset-based, meaning that it's important that that asset, which is going to be transferred to the recipient, is climate resilient. So in that sense, the way we have been organizing it is that from all of our operations, we look at how to make them resilient, whether it's for infrastructure projects that are fully development projects where we make sure that it's done in a resilient way, or whether you have this dual objective of adaptation, resilience, and development in our interventions, like projects that are addressing coastal erosion, projects that are addressing food security in an environment where you see a lot of drought and climate-related drought and flood, all of those. So it's very important to have the right system. So that's the system we have been putting in place. We have established a physical climate risk management system, which helps us streamline all these aspects. When we are financing a project in Turkey, for example, the Municipal Infrastructure for Recovery and Resilience project through Bank, which was a financing of 150 million euro, we look at those aspects as well. And when we are working with intermediary financing institutions like Bank, we make sure that they have the systems in place. So that aspect as well is quite important when we look at not only what we have established as an institution, but also with our partners, what we have established, so that we make sure that when we go down to the procurement, we have guidelines for sustainable procurement, guidelines for green procurement. But what is very important is that when we are appraising the projects, that the specific measures that we have put in a document, that they are effectively done on the ground. So this is very important. And having a strong partner like Bank and a strong municipality, it helps us down the road to make sure that this has been done in the proper way. Thank you.
Thank you. I think in Turkey the main problem is the capacity of the municipalities. They are elected for 5 years, and by the way, we are not able to sustain their capacity. However, we are giving regular training programs for these municipalities to increase them, but we are closing this gap by our capacity, and this is under the awareness of our partners. Thank you. Okay, I will go for the second round, Mr. Vito. Since 2011, we have a long-standing partnership with them, especially on water and sanitation projects. And could you share how JICA's experience in Turkey's reconstruction context has informed its broader strategy for climate resilient states globally? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Since 2015, we have been working with the Bank to support local municipalities, primarily in southeastern Turkey, by improving water supply, sewage, and water management facilities under the local authorities' environmental improvement projects phase 1 and 2. Thanks to these projects, during the February 2023 earthquake, Gaziantep expressed the Gaziantep didn't experience the big disaster where the facilities and the infrastructure were financed by us. And following the earthquake in February 2023, we launched the emergency earthquake disaster reconstruction project in collaboration with Bank. Has been working to restore water, sewage infrastructure in the affected municipalities. Separately, we have also contributed to the development of water supply and the sewage system in Ankara, the capital, through the Ankara Water Supply Project. Through these projects, we have supported the development of resilient environmental infrastructure capable of withstanding potential disasters and climate change. The impacts of climate change are not limited to Turkey. They are occurring worldwide. While the nature of these impacts vary by country and region, we anticipate more frequent heavy rainfall and increasingly intense cyclones. So water and sewage facilities are essential infrastructure directly linked to the people's daily life. Therefore, when developing such environmental infrastructure, it is imperative to incorporate measures that mitigate disaster impacts and enhance resilience to climate change. Thank you very much.
I would like to say that last decades we spent almost 300 million US dollar to the earthquake region with JICA finance, and be sure that we haven't any damage in this 300 million US dollar projects, because it was the high quality construction. Whenever, not only of course JICA, but with the other IFIs, this will increase the quality of investments as well. So thank you. And Ms. Barza, EBRD always like to promote public sector, and whenever we make any discussion, the second sentence generally is about the private sector's engagement. By the way, this is your second question, as always. So, how can EBRD's experience with private sector engagement and green financing instruments help accelerate the transition from recovery to climate-resilient growth in urban areas?
Thank you. Yes, EBRD is a very private sector focused bank. I think 75% of our lending is with the private sector, and much of the public sector lending is to sub-sovereigns, to municipalities. So our work in the earthquake response in Turkey is sometimes a bit of a special case, as having more sovereign engagement than usual. So our partnership with İlbank here, I think, is particularly appreciated in this context, as we're very, very private sector focused. But I think that's an important part of understanding how to build back better and how to respond to disasters, because the private sector is very agile. That's a real strength of it. So when the earthquake struck, at EBRD, we also obviously mobilized immediately to do what we could and developed a 600 million euro facility, the disaster response framework, for our commercial bank partners in Turkey to deliver loans onward. We're also a bank, we lend onward to affected households and SMEs, but also to the businesses that were facilitating the recovery themselves, like essential construction and engineers, and the SMEs that were supporting the public sector and infrastructure recovery. And that's just a very big scale of number. I think with İlbank, we're somewhere in the range of maybe 300 million now across Adıyaman and Hatay. And we also have a project at EBRD with Energia for infrastructure, and 600 million, twice that, for the private sector resilience. And why does that matter? Because when a business goes out of business, you can't just turn it on again. It's not a matter of replacing the pipes and it will run as before. That business might be gone forever. That person running that business might not have resources to start again and develop a new business. They've lost their contacts, their contracts, their trust in the community if they couldn't float the need for financial resources during the times they couldn't operate. So that immediate liquidity is really important. So EBRD arranged this facility and signed it within a month of the earthquake, which I don't know if you've ever tried to apply for a loan. That is actually very fast in the scheme of things. And the first money went to one of our partner banks in just 3 months after the disaster to be distributed onwards to the private sector. So we see the private sector as an essential part of recovery itself. And that facility, I think, was also important because it demonstrates the need for integrated decision-making and allocation of resources. So when you're building infrastructure, when you're developing adaptations, you have to think of the full picture. What is the public sector doing, and how does the private sector respond to that? So, for example, we were engaged in a direct loan of 30 million euros with Ronson's holding group to recover some of their shopping plazas in the earthquake-affected region. And these were important community hubs in many ways. Like during the aftermath, they served as emergency shelters, as food distribution sites. And so we wanted them to get back up and running for the economic viability of the regions as well. And we wanted to use the resources efficiently and effectively. So we're building back better there, in part by embedding some training and skills for future sales skills for women, for example, in this project. But also thinking about not gold plating anything. When we do our climate physical risk assessments and our risk assessments generally, we'll see obviously they're exposed to earthquake risk, they're exposed to flood risk, they're exposed to many climate risks. And you can build resilience to that with capital investments in the projects. If there's a flood risk, you can build a great big wall. You can dig great big ditches and pipes in the shopping plaza. You can do that. It's expensive, and it might not make sense when you look at what the public sector is doing and how they have plans to manage that flood risk, potentially upstream works, potentially municipal infrastructure to channel the flows. And so you need to have this partnership where you understand the businesses will be more resilient because of what the public sector is doing. And there we deployed a guarantee as well. We worked with the European Fund for Sustainable Development, the EFSD plus guarantees, to enable us to lend to this commercial operation, giving us a guarantee that there's secure repayment on that loan. So financial instruments like guarantees are critically important in the aftermath because we are an MDB, but we're also a commercial investor. We have a duty to follow sound banking principles, to look out for our shareholders' interests with development goals in mind, but ultimately making sure that these are sound repayment opportunities. So thinking about this, it's important to note that the private sector not only supports the recovery, gives us lessons for what kind of financial structures can be used in the public sector as well, but the private sector also has an opportunity to itself build back better and think about its long-term future.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. As you expressed, after the earthquake, people has to sleep at their homes, people has to move, they drink water, they use water, they make wastewater, they communicate, they move, and of course they have to work to make money. So this build back better approach is an integrated approach with housing, infrastructure, and of course with the business, private sector. So thank you. Again, Dauda, we are working with ISTB since 2015, and we are working especially for the mobility sector. And ISTB's efforts are generally about, again, the mobility of the railways and public transportation. But you expressed that the capacity of the municipalities and organ institutions in Turkey. So the question is again about the capacity for you. How does the ISTB support national development banks like İlbank and like the other banks in strengthening local authorities' implementation and financial management capacities, of course? Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm a climate specialist, but I will try to get into the financial management capacities of the municipalities. So, yes, we have a program together which has been launched in 2016 on urban transport, and it covers several cities: Antalya, the light rail project, the Kayseri light rail transit project, or the Kazirey suburban line and light rail transition project. So we are also we just had a project that was approved with İlbank that will help us also in strengthening the transport system in other cities. So what we have seen is that it's good that with time we have established a good partnership, and that we were able to learn from lessons from the implementation of these projects under the program. And one of the issues that was identified was that, we're talking about 2016 when it started, and now we are in 2025. So you have the lifetime of the project, and at the same time you have some political, some changes at the head of the municipalities and things like that. So that transition, it's very, we have been very lucky to be able to work with one institution that is still there, which is İlbank, to ensure that this transition is supported, and it helped in preventing some delays in the implementation of projects. Of course, you are mentioning the capacities of the local municipalities. So the way we see it here is that we're having different layers. So the first being, of course, at the ISDB level, when we develop the environmental and social safeguards, or we have our own procurement arrangements, our own guidelines. All of those, when we are working with institutions like İlbank, we make sure that the institution has the capacity. So we are very happy to see that since the last 2 years you have established your own environmental and social management system. So these are systems that help make sure that you at the country level, when you are dealing with the municipalities, you have your own system that we can rely on. Now the challenge is how we can collectively support these municipalities, and I think we have a few instruments, technical assistance, grants that we can deploy to work on building the capacities of these municipalities. We also have we just launched our environmental and social safeguards, and we are engaging with the public. I will share the link with all of you for consultation. So this is very important. We want to work with institutions like Bank and other bilateral and multilateral institutions to make sure that we are harmonizing our systems. If we are harmonizing our systems, it means that we are also putting our major resources together for joint capacity building for the municipalities in these areas. So we know that at the G20 level, there's already discussion on these aspects of harmonization, and this is how I see that we can work together to make sure that we are building the capacities of our local partners.
So I ask this question because we have a very strong team in the climate in Turkey at the central government level. However, it is not easy to increase the capacity at the local level. So we are trying to localize all their plans and all their efforts at the city level, and we hope that we need a basic level of capacity to start these activities. And beyond this, we have already combating with climate change or mitigate or make some adaptation efforts, but they are not aware of that. These are the mitigation and these are the adaptation efforts. So this is the main problem, and we are trying to build a capacity as a basic level, and of course then there will be more or better results in the future from our municipal aspect. So thank you for these speeches. I would like to give the floor to the audience if there's any questions. Otherwise, I will close the session. Okay, thank you for coming and listening us. Today we listened to three international financial institutions. As you see that the objective is the same. However, doing the way of business is different. By the way, we listened to three distinguished panelists, and I want to thank on behalf of my country and my institution for coming and being here. Thank you very much.